Welcome back to the Imaginary Gallery. It's DJ, your host, and we're rummaging through the Psychopath's bag of tricks and referencing Robert D Hare's book, Without Conscience, The Disturbing World of the Psychopaths Among Us, and we're in the section of Can Anything Be Done? Therapy may make them worse. Dr. Hare informs us that some type of group therapy is an important part of most prison and court-mandated treatment programs. Group therapy is sometimes included in a therapeutic community program in which the patients or the inmates are given considerable responsibility for running their own lives. The ward staff forms an integral part of the community and is specially trained to focus on the needs and capabilities of the patients and to treat them in a humanitarian and respectful way. Such programs are intensive and very costly in terms of both facilities and personnel, and they do work reasonably well with most offenders. However, they do not work for psychopaths. Evidence for this stark conclusion is provided by several recent studies of forensic patients treated in a therapeutic community program. In each case, the patients were assessed with the psychopathy checklist. In one study, psychopaths were not motivated to do well. They dropped out of the treatment plan early, and they derived relatively little benefit from the program. After their release from prison, their rate of return was much higher than that of the other patients. In another study, psychopaths were almost 4 times more likely to commit a violent offense after their release from a therapeutic community program than were other patients. But not only was the program not effective for psychopaths, it may actually have made them worse. Psychopaths who did not take part in the program were less violent after their release from the unit than were the treated psychopaths. At first glance, this finding may appear to be a bizarre thing. How could psychotherapy make a person worse? But the finding is not all that surprising to those who run such programs. They report that psychopaths usually dominate the proceedings, frequently playing head games or mind games with the group leaders and the other patients. Quote,
"Your problem is that you rape women because you unconsciously want to punish them for what your mother did to you."
End quote. The psychopath pedantically tells another patient. At the same time, he offers few insights into his own behavior. Unfortunately, programs of this sort merely provide the psychopaths with better ways of manipulating, deceiving, and using people. As one psychopath put it, quote,
"These programs are like a finishing school. They teach you how to put the squeeze on people."
End quote. They also are a rich source of facile excuses for the psychopath's behavior.
"I was an abused child,"
or
"I never learned to get in touch with my feelings."
after-the-fact insights of this sort explain very little, but they sound good to those primed to hear them. Dr. Hare says that he is constantly amazed at how willing some professionals are to take such statements at face value. Group therapy and therapeutic community programs are not the only source of new tactics psychopaths use to convince others that they've changed. They frequently make use of prison programs designed to upgrade their education. Courses in psychology, criminology, and sociology are very popular. These programs, like those devoted to therapy, may supply these creatures with little more than superficial insight and knowledge of terms and concepts. Buzzwords having to do with interpersonal and emotional processes, but they allow psychopaths to convince the gullible that they've been rehabilitated or born again. Young psychopaths. Logically, the best chance of reducing the impact of adult psychopathy on society is to attack the problem early. Thus far, however, such efforts have not been very successful. After an extensive review of treatment programs, sociologist William McCord was led to conclude that, quote,
"Attempts to deflect the person from his or her psychopathic pattern early in life generally have not been successful."
Still, he felt that some hope was offered by programs in which the individual's social and physical environment was completely changed, and the entire resources of the institution were mobilized to promote fundamental changes in his or her attitudes and behaviors. But the results of one such program, described in detail by McCord, are sobering. Although the attitudes and behaviors of psychopathic adolescents seemed to improve during and after the program, the effect dissipated as they got older. The situation may change as we learn more about the roots of psychopathy. Further, psychologists have developed intervention programs that are very successful in changing the attitudes and behaviors of children and adolescents who have a variety of behavioral problems. Many of these programs deal not only with the child, but also with the family and the social context in which the problems occur. If used at a very early age, it's possible that some of these programs will be useful in modifying the behavior patterns of so-called budding psychopaths, perhaps by reducing aggression and impulsivity and by teaching them strategies for satisfying their needs in more pro-social ways. Another sobering thought. Virtually all of the evidence on the effectiveness of treatment for psychopaths is based on programs that are designed for people in prison or psychiatric facilities or in trouble with the law. Many of these programs are intensive, very well thought out, and carried out under reasonably good conditions, and they still are ineffective. Even if some programs were effective in changing the attitudes and behaviors of these psychopathic people, there would be no way of using it to deal with the millions of psychopaths not in custody or court-mandated to enter treatment. There is little or no chance that any on-the-street psychopaths would even contemplate entering such a program, and society has no means of forcing them to do so. Occasional case reports or bits of anecdotal evidence claim that some particular procedure has had a beneficial effect on a psychopath. For example, in the past few years, several people have told Dr. Hare that they've managed to bring about considerable improvement in the behavior of a psychopath that they lived with. They can't understand why he does not get excited about their experiences. Perhaps they did manage to make a therapeutic breakthrough, but there's no way of determining if that's the case. Was the treated individual actually a psychopath? Did he or she improve in middle age, a time when the behaviors of some of these creatures spontaneously improve? What was the individual's behavior like before the change? And how do we know that it was the psychopath who changed? Many people confuse improvement in the behavior of the psychopath with changes in the way they themselves deal with the person. For example, a lady with a psychopathic husband may say that he's not quite as bad as he once was. But what really may have happened is that she just learned how to deal with the problem by staying out of his way or by working extra hard to satisfy his needs and demands. She may have buried her personality and sacrificed her needs and aspirations in order to reduce conflict and tension in the relationship. We cannot take seriously claims of effective treatments for psychopathy unless they are based on carefully controlled empirical studies. Now, with my own experience dealing with this kind of thing, I've noticed cluster B creatures, whether they're psychopaths or narcissists or a blending of all of them, the ones I've known seem to use the therapy as a way to catch, as he said, buzzwords. They learn words like projection. So if you have a genuine concern about them, because you called them all night last night and there was no answer, and there's a fair next door to their home, and you had a feeling that maybe it went over to the fair to cause some trouble, and you say, "Did you go to the fair last night and cause trouble? Is that why you didn't answer my call?" They may use their jargon they picked up in therapy class and say, "You must have gone there. You must have gone to that fair. That's why you're asking if I did. You're projecting!" And they will use that to try to get by without having to explain what they were really doing. They also will listen to things the therapist says, and they will memorize them, just like they memorize things with you when it's the very beginning stages, and they're idealizing you. They will soak in every tiny detail regarding things that indicate what you're about. Well, they do the same thing as the therapist speaks to them and tells them these jargon words, and they will build them up, and they will use them against their targets. I've also had a situation where I wasn't in a therapy session, but I had a particular cluster B creature try to tell me that by my questioning how it could have lied about such and such after it said it would never lie, and was honestly looking for a logical answer, I'd be given a response like,
"You're just trying to make me feel bad for what I did."
Which is a deflection, because I'm not trying to make anybody feel anything, and that's what I would say. It's like, I can't make you feel anything. If you feel something and I bring light to it, and then you feel it, that's not me making you feel it. That's you recognizing that I'm recognizing that you're doing something you shouldn't. But they want to alleviate any personal responsibility. They have no accountability, so they would rather just say, well, you're trying to make me feel horrible. So I would say again, honey, I can't make you feel anything. Well then, in another situation, when it was doing something manipulative, I may say something that sounds kind of like that. You're just trying to make it so I'm upset because of blah blah blah. And I'll hear,
Oh no, I'm not capable of making you do anything. If you are feeling upset, it's because you are upset.
and they'll just twist it around and again avoid discussing the issue. So yes, I agree. Therapy may make them worse, as well as simple conversations, which involve concepts that probably do come up in therapy anyway, will also do the trick. The next video will be called, Should We Simply Give Up? Stay tuned.
I am the narcopath of your wildest dreams.
So I understand you've been talking about origin?
And when we dated, I told you about my origins, but you always questioned them. I guess I didn't practice too well on that because, quite frankly, I was making the whole thing up. I was trying my best to make it sound as similar to yours as possible. You don't want to know how I was raised. You don't want to know.
I was basically born in a gutter. I don't even know who my father is. My mother's lied to me about who it is on several occasions. I don't even have an identity.
I spent most of my young years being tortured by my peers, making fun of me because, what'd they call me? A bastard. They called me a bastard because I had no recognizable father. I tried to tell them it was Burt Reynolds, but they wouldn't believe it. And I spent most of my days being beaten by the other kids. The one good thing is it taught me how to be tough. I grew up to be the narcopath, which means I take care of myself now, thanks to all that. But those kids, they were evil. Well, I showed them evil 20 times worse.
My mother's side of the family wanted nothing to do with me, and that was the only side of the family I knew of. So I attempted to run off on my own because I felt unwanted in my house. My brothers and sisters all knew who their daddy was and made fun of me.
Even though I had lied previously about who my father was, I just made up a name so I wouldn't have to stay with my parents when I was on my own. I had to steal things, I had to rob the neighbors. I stayed basically in an empty apartment. I entered through the window until I was discovered. Then my parents took me back in. I did not like the way I was treated. I came back to their home and I wreaked havoc. I laughed at all the kids around that used to consider doing something naughty, but then they'd say, oh, I can't, I'd be too guilty. And I'd think, guilt? Guilty for what? What's that? Just do it. And so I would do it. I realized eventually I had a power over these people. These people had guilt that inhibited their behaviors. I had no such thing, which means I could lie, I could swindle, I could scam, I could do whatever I wanted and get away with it. Still end up looking like a rose. Some people are so stupid. They let these petty emotions get in their way of having fun. Well, not the narcopath, that's for sure. You can look, but you can't touch. I don't think I like you much. Heaven knows what a girl can do. Heaven knows what you got to prove. I think I'm paranoid. I think I'm paranoid. Manipulator. Then they break reality. I fall down to give you a thrill, prop me up with another pill. If I should fail, if I should fold, I add my name to the ticking flow. I think I'm paranoid.